Hello, OT friends, and welcome to the Uncommon OT series. My name is Patricia Modis. I'm the Transitions OT, and I'm your host. So today I am super excited to introduce our guest of honor, Normanie McKenzie Ricks. Normanie is an occupational therapist who has a passion for helping individuals with neurological and vision deficits, particularly those with learning-related vision problems. She's a graduate of the University of Alabama at Birmingham and UCLA. As a proud veteran officer of the United States Navy, she provided occupational therapy intervention to service members and their families and addressed neurological issues so they could return to full duty and fulfilled lives. She is a member of the Lions Club, who serves and advocates for the blind and visually impaired through its local and global initiatives. She also travels internationally and provides instruction for educators at their schools for the blind and developmentally disabled. Normanie's personal passion for the field hits really close to home. As a third grader, her very own daughter began to have difficulty with reading comprehension, reporting daily headaches and struggling with standardized assessments. After vision therapy, she now reads above grade level and scored at the 9th grade level on her writing assessments as a 5th grader. She continues to excel in her academic endeavors. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Normanie McKenzie Ricks. Welcome, Normanie.
Hi, I'm so happy to be on this platform and to talk to other OTs.
Yay, we're so happy to have you. I cannot wait to talk a little bit more about your specialty. I've been fascinated with it for years now and actually have a little bit of experience myself in working with those with low vision due to head trauma. And I've learned so much from your social media platform alone on the different things to look for. So super excited to talk more about the details. But before we delve into all of that, I'd love to hear a little bit more about you and your background.
Okay, great. So I was first introduced to vision therapy and what you just called low vision at my program at University of Alabama at Birmingham. We had a professor named Dr. Mary Warren who actually wrote a lot of the protocols on low vision rehab. I'm sure a lot of the protocols that you guys follow every day. So I was first introduced to low vision through that program. And that's when you work with individuals that may have like diabetic retinopathy, macular degeneration, vision loss after a stroke, peripheral vision loss, central vision loss, and things like that. It wasn't until my daughter was actually diagnosed with convergence insufficiency and accommodative disorder did I learn about binocular vision disorders and how it can affect your reading comprehension, and all of those things. I did work with a lot of people after they had a traumatic brain injury and a concussion on vision rehab, but it all kind of ties together, and I think it's very interesting.
I love how that's all come together for you. For those of us who are pretty 101 at vision therapy, can you talk to us a little bit about binocular vision disorder?
I sure can. So binocular vision disorders, in the I guess medical term for it is oculomotor dysfunction. It's when your eyes don't work together as a team. So when you're looking at something close, things start getting blurry, start having double vision, and then you look far off and you might see things clearly. So it's your inability to see things at close range and then at far range. So things like copying from a board where you have to go back and forth, your eyes don't coordinate correctly. One eye might act right, and then the other one may not cooperate with it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, your brain tells your eyes what to see, what to perceive, but your brain also controls your motor function. So it has to be a neurological connection between the brain and the eyes that's not functioning correctly that causes your eyes not to work together as a team.
And because they're not working together as a team, what types of things would we see functionally?
Oh, that's a great question. So, I like to say that a lot of the kids that I've seen that come to me that they say have dysgraphia, because we see dysgraphia a lot as occupational therapists, right? A lot of times it is trouble copying from the board. They can't see it. Or a lot of times people will come to me with the diagnosis of dyslexia because they had letter reversals. But what people don't know, I want to say this. A lot of people don't know that letter reversals are actually very common up until the age of 7. So just because your child has letter reversals does not mean that they're dyslexic.
Yes.
But so a lot of with the visual motor deficiency and visual perceptual issues, I feel like we see this a lot as occupational therapists with difficulty with tracking, difficulty with visual perception, difficulty with spatial relationships, difficulty with visual closure, difficulty with scanning and tracking, and just hand-eye coordination in general.
Yes. So I'm sure I could totally see the functional implications of having difficulties in those areas. So thanks for going over that with us, and also for sharing with us, about your sort of personal piece and motivation for working in this area with your daughters and some of the challenges that she was having. What motivated you to contribute to our podcast today?
Well, I just get so many questions from teachers, from parents, from other OTs. And I just wanted to educate the public, really, because it's just something that gets overlooked a lot. It gets overlooked a lot. I think like a red flag is like issues with hand-eye coordination, issues with, not being able to tell your left from your right, because that's a difficulty with like spatial relationships, difficulty with skipping words and omitting letters when reading and writing. These are a lot of the red flags that you'll see with binocular vision disorders, visual perceptual disorders. And I really, really, really get on my soapbox when I'm talking about dyspraxia, which is developmental coordination disorder, which I feel like gets overlooked a lot.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what that is?
So one test that I like a lot is the BOT. We do that a lot in school therapy. The BOT has gross motor, fine motor, and visual motor. So if a child is struggling in all of those areas, it is very likely that they have developmental coordination disorder, which means a disorder globally of motor, vision, and fine motor.
Got it. Okay. So it's a great way to sort of screen whether we should look into those areas more specifically. Okay. So just digesting all of the information that you shared right now, can you describe to us the work that you're doing, where you're currently practicing? I know that you have an entrepreneurial business serving the same population. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that, the setting that you're working in, and some of the needs that you're addressing?
Okay. So I work in an outpatient setting right now. I work with people of all ages. So I work with babies with the Babies Can't Wait program here in Georgia. I'll get a lot of kids that are like born with strabismus, born severely premature, born with hypoxia, different things like that, where they're born, with a birth injury or a brain injury. So we start very early treating those kids. And then I have school age kids that come to my clinic, mostly after school, and we'll work on a lot of the visual perceptual issues and binocular vision disorder issues and hand-eye coordination issues. But I also work with low vision, also have like a lot of success stories that from working with adults after they've had surgery from diabetic retinopathy, where they have to reattach the retinas, or they have strabismus surgery where they correct your vision. And then we do vision therapy exercises. So we may do, so an example of an activity that we may do is like a scavenger hunt, or we might do an Instacart order where we have to go find things on the shelves, because a lot of adults that have had traumatic brain injury or have low vision have issues at the grocery store or navigating stairs, and just think functional activities like that.
I love that you're able to really work with clients on those very sort of much needed life skills, right? And particularly, very current too, because who isn't Instacarting nowadays?
Exactly.
So great. I want to talk more about those sessions.
Okay.
But before we do, can you describe to us a little bit how you ended up in this path? I knew you went to OT school and had your experience with your daughter, really helping you kind of identify this need, right? But how were you able to kind of pave a path for yourself as an OT within this specialty?
So that's a really great question. When I first graduated from OT school, I joined the Navy, and the Navy told me that I was going to be able to do orthopedic therapy, and that's what I really wanted to do. And then the first duty station, they sent me to do pediatrics. So I was like, this is not what I signed up for at all.
Wait, how does that work? In the Navy?
Exactly.
Are there kids there?
Yes. So what happens is they assign you to different duty stations, and there are kids and families on the base. So like they might send you to a school to work, or I got sent to an early intervention program. So when I got sent to the early intervention program, they were like, congratulations, you're the clinic manager. And I was like, I have no experience in management. They're like, well, you're a naval officer, you're a manager. That just goes with the job. So I was like, okay. So I was thrown into the fire. I had no experience working with kids, and I had no experience in managing anybody. So I learned.
And here you are working with kids.
Exactly.
And managing everybody.
I fought it really hard. And then I was just like, well, maybe this is what my gift. So I worked with a lot of kids that had like Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, just you name it. I saw it on the base. And I just started, I guess, knowing a lot about neurological conditions after that. And then my second duty station was at the Naval Medical Center, San Diego, where I was put in charge of the Wounded Warrior program. Once again, I was told I was going to be doing orthopedics, working with amputees. Well, they kind of had that covered. So I had to fill in the gaps with the neurological rehab. So I did a lot with the traumatic brain injury team. And then we learned that there was a lot of visual issues after concussion, after a brain injury, after, you get blasted in the face by a bomb. So I just started learning about different brain injury apps, and then doing the Dynavision, doing driving rehab. We did like a lot of community reintegration trips.
Yes.
So I just got more and more involved in vision therapy, and I had an optometrist who was like, well, as an OT, you need to be doing these things. So he taught me a lot about vision therapy. And then I met one of my mentors who I look up to. His name is Dr. Mitchell Scheinman. He does a lot of research in this area of vision therapy with adults and children. So I started following his path and just going to some of his courses and learning a lot from him. And his wife is an OT. So they've written a lot of books about vision and OT. So I learned a lot from those two.
Oh, fantastic. How fascinating. I'm just digesting everything that you've shared. And we're definitely going to cite your amazing mentor in our show notes, just so folks can
Mhm.
also, particularly because his wife is an OT,
Yeah.
just so we can feature some of their work. But
hmm
oh my gosh, okay, so here you are in the Navy. You're ready to
hmm
work with some ortho clients, right? Perhaps
hmm
service members who have gone through, are going through physical rehab, and here you are working in a school. And I'm assuming these are the children of the service members, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
when you talked about their, conditions like Down syndrome and CP, like, wow, I'm extra fascinated. So, like, these children are traveling the world with their parents, in this,
Right.
kind of lifestyle. And we kind of know also the challenges when it comes to lack of structure, or and maybe the armed forces makes up for that a little bit, but at the same time, I never even thought in that direction. So thank you for schooling me a little bit about that. And then switching over to, the Wounded Warrior program and working with TBI clients, and then really honing in, your specialty today, right? And
Right.
I love all of that. Again, it's always seems to be the theme of the show. It's that, OTs kind of practice in different settings, and at the end of the day, today, you're that OT who has sort of gained experiences from all of those settings, good or bad, right? That was
Right.
not where you intended on being, but look at you now working with mostly pediatrics. So, I think these experiences really, they're so necessary. So even if we're dreading them, do it anyway, right? You'll never know what it's going to spark
So,
in you.
so what they say in the Navy is bloom where you're planted.
It's a motto, okay? And you certainly bloomed.
Thank you.
You did. So, okay, great. So that was a lot of info about what it's like to be an OT in the Navy. Maybe we
Mhm.
can do another show just on that, because I find that to be super fascinating. Can you now segue into telling us more about like what a typical day like is for you? What a typical session might be like? What are some typical goals that you might work on with some clients?
When I got out of the Navy, my first job out of the Navy was in the school system. They were hiring OTs like crazy. I was out in California, and they really needed someone to work with their autism academy and just in their school systems in general. So I did that. And then that was, I guess, the first time I started discovering so many children that had visual perceptual issues. And like I said, they were being referred to me for dysgraphia.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's what kind of made me have the aha moment
Mm-hmm.
of, well, this isn't really a handwriting issue. Well, it's a visual motor issue, visual motor integration issue. So that kind of, and then a lot of the assessments that we do as school therapists, the Beery VMI, the test
Mm-hmm.
of visual motor perception, what's called the RAVMA. It's a lot of school assessments that's been around since the 60s that address vision.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, like I said, that was kind of like the aha moment for me. So, in my clinic, I do those assessments. I do those assessments that I learned when I was a school therapist, because
Mm-hmm.
it addresses it all.
Yes.
So I think that the reason why I definitely want to educate other OTs and teaching them how to, I guess, have that aha moment as well, it might not be what you think it is. Yeah, there's a lot of kids that need to be referred to like a developmental optometrist or a neurologist. I work with an awesome group of functional neurologists who also do vision therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I collaborate a lot with them. I met them at a training at the University of Cincinnati. So, as far as people that actually do vision therapy, it's developmental optometrists,
Mm-hmm.
functional neurologists, and OTs.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Good to know. Good to
Yep.
know. So your typical setup on a typical day in a
Mm-hmm.
session? Like, how many kids do you usually see at your clinic?
Mm-hmm.
What kinds of things do you usually do with them?
So we do like a lot of visual tracking and scanning activities. We do what's called cancellation activities. So you might have to cancel out all the A's on the line of text.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you might have to read aloud and not skip any words. You
Okay.
might have to do visual memory activities. So, what is the pattern you just saw? Okay, you saw a frog, a snake, and a rabbit. Okay, close your eyes. What do you remember? Or, just different patterns with colors and shapes. Yeah, so we do a lot of visual closure activities with shapes. The number one thing that I see the most is these kids cannot draw a diamond and they cannot draw a star. It's a serious visual disturbance when they try to
Okay.
do these things.
Oh, what is that about?
I think it has to do with just the brain not telling the eyes what to see, not telling the eyes how to coordinate properly, just the brain not functioning as far as like a fine motor. It's a lot of visual motor integration, I feel like.
Yes. So the
And
brain
like,
telling the body what to do and how to do
right,
it. Okay.
right.
Got it.
hmm
So, how do you get your referrals?
I get my referrals mostly from pediatricians. I get them from neurologists. I get them from primary care doctors. I get them from other OTs.
Mm-hmm.
I get a lot of parents who just call me out of the blue because they found me on the website, just things
Okay.
like that.
Great. And did you have to do anything in particular to promote yourself to these pediatricians and neurologists?
Yes, it was a lot of footwork.
Okay. Can
I
you tell
made
us
my
a
own
little bit about that
flyers.
footwork? Tell us a little
So,
bit about it. What kind of
right.
footwork? What's needed? What kind of footwork is needed?
So, of course, in this world, we have to have a website, we have to have social media, but we also have to have like a lot of pamphlets, flyers, networking opportunities. So, I went to the special education conference with my schools here to try to, get to know the teachers and the systems and things like that. So, I would say that mostly that type of stuff, just going and delivering flyers and faxing flyers to different pediatrician offices and different neurology offices and just trying to get my name out there, being on things like this, podcasts, things like that.
Okay. Thank you for sharing some of that. I think that's always
Yeah.
a question, like how do you get these referrals? I know
Mm-hmm.
that's always a word that comes up when it comes to interviewing an OT entrepreneur. And the follow-up question is always like, well, where do you get them? How do you get
Mm-hmm.
them? So, okay, referrals you're able to get, and congratulations for, having that kind of steady funnel of referrals. A lot of footwork went into that and a lot of grind, right? But it
Yes.
sounds like it's paying off, which is wonderful. Can you
Mm-hmm.
talk to us a little bit about your charging system? Like, do you accept insurance? Do you do private pay? Anything of that sort?
So luckily, I was a manager for lots of years, and I learned about billing and ICD-10 codes and Medicare and insurance and Blue Cross Blue Shield and United Healthcare. You name it, I did it. So I think that helped me a lot to be an OT entrepreneur because I kind of knew the administrative side.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to some courses too. Dr. Penny Stack, she has a place in a clinic in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where she does a lot with dyslexia. So she was telling us if an OT sees a child with some of these disorders, what ICD-10 codes to bill. And
Mm-hmm.
I think
Oh,
about, I don't know how many years ago, Medicaid only started really accepting the therapeutic activities code. So you got to be careful about billing with that. It's like certain ICD-10 codes and certain CPT codes, or you'll get denied. So I
okay.
definitely do bill insurance, but I also have a self-pay rate as well. And I just came up with my self-pay rate because of being a manager and knowing what insurance usually reimburses per therapy session. So
Yes.
I
Oh, wow.
try to make it affordable though.
Okay. And I love that you're also accepting the insurance piece, right? Because I know not
Mm-hmm.
everyone is able to afford private pay. But it's
Right.
also great to know that you have the private pay stuff too, because that kind of
Mm-hmm.
complements each other.
Mm-hmm. So every mentor that I've had in this area, say about 20 visits, you'll start, seeing results, and people are usually happy after about 20 visits.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kind of go along with that as well.
Okay. And how
Mhm.
often are your visits? Are they weekly, bi-weekly? Okay.
Usually weekly, but as you know, every person is different and their needs are different, but usually weekly.
Are there any lows or challenges or any successes or highs that you'd like to share with us today?
As an OT, I love outpatient rehab. And I feel like I love outpatient rehab is because you get a lot of highs and you get a lot of, oh, they came here doing this and they left doing that. I've never been one to like inpatient rehab, nothing against inpatient rehab, but it's kind of depressing if people don't get better. So I always wanted
Or
to
by the
get like,
time they get better, they move on, right? Because
right, I
they've
like to see
exhausted your
my
level of
work.
care. Yeah.
I like to see my work. So I definitely get a lot of highs in outpatient rehab. And that's why I've pretty much stuck with that side of things.
Yes. I love that you identified the setting in which you work as sort of a success, right? Because I
Mhm.
sure feel like identifying that just right place where you feel good about going to work every day and just like you're
Mhm.
energized by it is such a key thing. Like I wish
Mhm.
that on every OT, right? And if that's not
Mhm.
happening for you every day, at least make it happen for you once a week, right? Or every
Yes.
once in a while and build it into your time. That's
Mhm.
always my advice. But I'm an outpatient girl myself.
Okay.
Having just a little bit of experience in inpatient, but I do see that even I guess one experience that I can share is like working in a shelter, right, where people live there. So I look at that as like more inpatient, although they had outpatient lives while they're living there, versus someone who is already living on their own in their own place, right? That's kind of the one of the differences that I'm identifying. And I always found that when I worked with that person who was already living in their own place, there's so much more potential to the types of goals that we can come up with, because we're not just focused on trying to help them find a house or trying to figure solve this crisis at the moment.
Right.
So the outpatient level allows for you to really work on like higher level goals, right? And
Mhm.
goals that are kind of energizing to us too as helpers.
Right. I feel like I like working with kids a little bit more nowadays because of the neuroplasticity. The brain is so plastic. Like the
Mm-hmm.
kids get better so fast. It's very, very, very interesting. And then as far as like low vision when I'm working with adults, so like that is rewarding for me too, because you can come up with different adaptations and
Yes.
different ways to help them navigate their environment and navigate their daily life, and
Yes.
that's successful as well. Even if they can't get the vision back, they can still live a happy and fulfilled life, so that's
Absolutely.
rewarding as well.
It sure is. I want to share just a briefly experience that I have with someone who was living at a domestic violence shelter and finally found an apartment to live in. However, this apartment was obviously like a new territory, right? This person had low vision, was able to see shadows and shapes. So, was able to maintain her safety for the most part, but really required kind of like a retraining in navigating her new environment. So it meant sessions like, going in the elevator with her and trying to, because this was a high rise. So, imagine all those elevator buttons. So just doing a whole count of how many buttons it is up to her floor, right? And figuring out emergency exits from her new unit, how to get to the supers, apartment from her place and getting to the supermarket from her new place. So really invigorating, really great sessions that were just so important too for this particular individual. So that's why I have so much respect for what you're doing. And I love that you're sharing your knowledge, and particularly to other OTs. So on that note, do you have any career advice for any of our listeners on how to get started on this path, aside from reaching out to you?
Yes. Aside from reaching out to me, like I said, there are some good programs like the Low Vision program at UAB. There's vision therapy programs at Salus University and at Cincinnati, where they do have vision rehab programs, and they do a lot with sports vision rehab too, which is pretty exciting. So it's some really great programs out there that I would highly recommend, and those are 3 of them.
Thank you for that. Just a quick segue. So the sports vision rehab, is that due to sports injuries? Yeah.
So the great question. So I guess I would talk about, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Tommy John surgery or Tommy John's elbow with pictures. So the myth is like, if you have this injury and you do rehab for it, you come back as a better pitcher. So I think they kind of discovered that. So after they had like a concussion or on the field or a brain injury on the field of like soccer or football, and they do these vision rehab exercises or vision therapy exercises, they come back as a better player. Like especially like with hand-eye coordination sports like lacrosse and football players and stuff like that. It's really very interesting how they integrate. Yes, called sports vision. A lot of the quarterbacks are doing it as well.
Okay, I'm thinking like that should just be part of their training then, no?
Yeah,
just like the regular boot camp or regular training.
Right.
Interesting. Another fun tidbit from you.
Yeah, I follow a lot of sports vision people on Instagram. Yeah, I get a lot of good ideas from them.
Okay. So it sounds like it's another kind of subspecialty niche even in vision therapy.
Right. Wow. There's a optometrist on the West Coast that works with I think it's the Chicago White Sox, where they do their spring training, and he's a regular part of their training, sports vision.
Wow. Do you think there would ever be any opportunity for an OT to work with a team to do this kind of stuff?
Absolutely.
I love it.
Absolutely.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Maybe our next episode will be you doing that kind of work.
Yeah. So they do it a lot at the University of Cincinnati.
Okay. So are there any common myths or misconceptions that you would like to demystify today about the work that you do in vision rehab and vision therapy?
Yes. I guess when I first started in this field, people were like, OTs don't do vision. But that is just not true. I feel like we do vision all the time, especially like you said, if you work in inpatient, if you work in brain injury rehab, if you work with kids in the school system, if you work with early intervention, you're going to see this stuff. So I think that it's best that we equip ourselves in these areas. And if someone says OT doesn't do that, well, yes, we do.
Yes. And in fact, what I'm hearing too is that, we tend to, I guess, have more of like a inquisitive, eyes when it comes to vision when we're working in these types of settings, like the rehab settings. If you're working with someone who's had a stroke, then you kind of have to do a visual assessment. But it sounds to me like it's something that we should always be doing, regardless of what population we're working with, because you're saying that
absolutely everything involves vision. Everything involves visual motor integration, buttoning your buttons, zipping zippers, writing, reading.
Yes.
Everything involves vision, navigating your environment. So, yeah.
Yeah, and the choices that we make based on what we actually see or not see.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Safety, fall precautions, things like
Yes.
that. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for, again, teaching me and the rest of the OT world about all of the amazing work that you do and also just the relevance of your specialty, even just in the work that we all do as OTs in a variety of settings. So thank you so much for sharing all of this information. If our guests wanted to be in touch again and follow you, how do we stay in touch?
Yes, so I am on Instagram as Achieve Vision Center and on Facebook as Achieve Vision Center. And my website is www.achievevisioncenter.com. And you can email me at nricks@achieveotsolutions.com.
Got it. Now, I know you also wrote a wonderful resource for parents and for teachers that'll enable them to work better with children who have visual impairments. Can you tell us a little bit about that and tell us how to
Yes, I
find it?
sure
How do we buy the
can.
book?
Okay. Yes. When I went to the special education conference, I ran into a lot of teachers for the visually impaired. I didn't even know they existed. And they were saying, we don't know how to do these things that you know how to do. So I was just like, okay. And I've just talked to a lot of teachers throughout my time as a school therapist. And they're like, oh, we don't know how to do this or we don't know how to do that. And parents too. So I wrote a book called The Vision Therapy Manual, A Parent and Teacher's Guide, just based on a lot of the questions that I've gotten over the years. And it's a very simple guide, and it just has some activities in there that you can do with your child, with your students. And it just gives you a good guide to guide. Like, if you see this, go to this page. If this child is submitting letters, or they can't do a maze, or they can't do puzzles, or just things that normal, typical developing kids can do, go to this page, work on these activities. So the book can be found on bookbaby.com. It's supposed to be sold on Amazon as well, but because of COVID, that's on back order. But you can still get the book on bookbaby.com.
It's so popular. Okay. Good to know.
Yes. So it's called The Vision Therapy Manual, A Parent and Teacher's Guide.
Oh, well, congratulations. We are going to list all of that in our show notes so that people will have access and they'll be able to buy your book when it's available to us.
But again, it's available on BookBaby.
On BookBaby, just not on Amazon.
And a lot of people like to order their books from Amazon. So I just wanted to put that out there. But it is available on the publishing website.
Okay. So again, thank you so much for, sharing all of this with us. I'm so impressed. You've identified a need for this manual. You've published the manual and it's out there for sale. I am just so proud of you as a fellow OT and impressed by all of the work that you've done and just wish you all of the best on your future endeavors. I have a feeling you're going to be back on the show to talk about other things that you're up to, and we'd love for that to happen.
I would love it. Thank you so, so much.
And that wraps up another inspiring episode of the Uncommon OT series. Connect with me at www.transitionsot.com. And don't forget to sign up to be part of the Transitions OT community. By doing so, you'll receive my latest compiled list of uncommon OT practice settings, the latest news on mentoring offerings, uncommon OT live events, non-traditional OT resources, and more. You may also follow me on my social media pages on Instagram and LinkedIn. And if you love this episode, head on over to Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, and Google Podcasts to follow, rate, and leave a review. I also ask you to consider pledging your support to my Passion Podcast project by being a patron on Patreon. It is very much appreciated. Sending big OT love. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.